The studio lights blazed down like an unforgiving sun, bathing the polished debate stage in a harsh glow that left no room for shadows, no place to hide. The hum of cameras filled the silence as millions tuned in live, the anticipation hanging. Heavy in the air like an impending storm, on one side stood Sarah Huckabee Sanders, governor of Arkansas, former White House press secretary, a figure synonymous with sharp retorts and unwavering loyalty to her political allies. She adjusted, her blazer with the practiced poise of someone who had stood at countless podiums and weathered relentless media firestorms. Her smile was thin, calculated, almost daring anyone to challenge her. Across from her, seated calmly at the table with a neatly stacked pile of documents and a demeanor so composed it felt almost disarming, out was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, rising star in progressive politics, civil rights attorney turned legislator whose fiery speeches and razor-sharp cross-examinations had made her a viral sensation more than once. But tonight wasn't just another TV appearance. Tonight, she was facing one of the most seasoned communicators in American politics. A woman known for turning questions into weapons and controversies into shields. The tension between the two women was palpable, a silent standoff that seemed to freeze the air as the moderator introduced the night's topic: political hypocrisy, accountability, and leadership. Nobody could have predicted just how explosive the next hour would become. Sanders leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain as she launched her opening salvo, accusing Crockett of playing politics instead of serving the people. "Congresswoman Crockett," she began, her southern drawl deceptively warm. "It's easy to sit up in Washington, D.C. and lecture the rest of us on leadership, but in Arkansas we focus on results, not rhetoric. Maybe if you spent less time on TikTok and more time on policy, you'd get something done for your constituents." Laughter rippled softly from some corners of the audience, but Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She simply tilted her head slightly, her calm expression betraying no hint of irritation. That's when viewers at home began to sense something unusual. Crockett wasn't there to defend herself. She was there to deliver a reckoning. Asterisk the first. Half of the debate played out like a verbal chess match. Sanders leaning heavily on her experience as the former face of the Trump administration, employing her signature tactics of deflection and counterattack. Every time Crockett spoke about systemic inequality or corruption in government, Sanders would pivot, turning the conversation into a critique of liberal policies or accusations of elitism. "Talk about justice, Congresswoman Sanders?" said at one point, her voice cutting through Crockett's like a knife. "But your party has turned the word justice into a political game. Meanwhile, real Americans are struggling, and all you care about is scoring points on Twitter." It was the kind of sharp line Sanders had used countless times before, the kind of jab that could leave opponents rattled. But Crockett wasn't. Rattled, she sat back in her chair, her hands folded neatly in front of her, her expression calm, almost amused. The audience noticed. Social media noticed. The hashtags were already beginning to trend. And then Crockett finally leaned forward, her voice low but commanding, and delivered her first blow. "Governor Sanders," she said, her tone measured, "you have a lot to say about justice being a game, but let's talk about your game. Let's talk about the time you stood at the White House podium and defended lies. Yes. The policies you support that hurt working families in Arkansas while you give tax breaks to the wealthy. Let's talk about hypocrisy, because you wrote the book on it." The audience gasped audibly, and Sanders blinked, her smirk faltering just slightly. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing the first crack in her composure. Crockett wasn't shouting. She wasn't gesturing wildly. She didn't need to. Her calm demeanor made every word land like a punch. Asterisk as the debate continued. Sanders tried to regain her footing, doubling down on her talking points and accusing Crockett of being out of touch with real America. She leaned forward, her voice rising, her finger jabbing the air. "You don't know what it's like to govern a state, to be responsible for real people's lives. All you do is grandstand in D.C. The tension in the room was electric. Viewers could feel Sanders' frustration, could see her attempts to dominate the conversation the way she had in countless press briefings. But Crockett refused to take the bait. She sat there, hands still folded, and let Sanders' words echo in the silence. Then, with the kind of composure that only comes from years of standing up to power, she spoke again. "Governor Sanders," she said softly, "you're right. I haven't governed a state. But I have stood in courtrooms where families begged for justice while politicians like you turned your backs. I've fought for people who had nothing, while leaders like you told them to pull themselves up by bootstraps they didn't even have. And you sit here tonight lecturing me about leadership, while refusing to acknowledge your own record. So let's talk about your record." Crockett reached for the stack of documents beside her, flipping them open for the cameras to see. "These are statistics from your own state," she continued, her voice unwavering. "Arkansas has one of the highest poverty rates in the country, one of the lowest education rankings, a healthcare crisis that you've refused to address. But somehow you found the time to ban books and attack teachers instead of helping families." The audience erupted in applause, and Sanders' face flushed crimson. What happened next was the kind of moment that political history is made of. Sanders, visibly rattled, tried to interrupt, her voice rising sharply. "That's not true. Those numbers are cherry-picked." But Crockett didn't stop. She raised her hand slightly, her calmness commanding the room. "No, Governor. These numbers are from your administration's own reports. You talk about being a leader for real Americans, but real Americans in your state are struggling. Instead of owning that, you've chosen to wage culture wars while families suffer." The crowd gasped again, and even the moderators struggled to regain control of the room. Sanders' frustration was now undeniable. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the podium, her voice trembling with anger. "You think you can come here and lecture me on leadership? You're a freshman congresswoman who hasn't accomplished a thing?" Crockett tilted her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "Governor," she said calmly, "if defending the truth and standing up for people you ignore means I've accomplished nothing, I'll wear that as a badge of honor." The camera zoomed in on Sanders' face, capturing every flicker of emotion as she struggled to regain her footing. Crockett, meanwhile, radiated composure, her calm stare cutting through the chaos. On social media, clips of the exchange spread like wildfire. TikTok users added dramatic music, slow-motion effects, and captions like "Jasmine Crockett destroys Sarah Sanders," and "When receipts speak louder than spin." Within minutes, hashtags like #Crockett vs Sanders and #receipts don't lie were trending worldwide. Late-night hosts were already drafting their monologues, and political commentators on every network scrambled to weigh in. Sanders, once a master of controlling narratives, now found herself on the defensive, her every attempt to recover sounding more like damage control than leadership. Meanwhile, Crockets.com/fact-driven dismantling of Sanders' arguments resonated deeply with viewers who had grown tired of political shouting matches. People weren't just watching a debate. They were watching a shift in the political conversation. By the end of the night, Crockett had cemented herself as a force to be reckoned with. She had faced one of the most seasoned debaters in American politics and emerged not only unscathed, but celebrated. Her calm demeanor, sharp intellect, and refusal to be intimidated had turned a heated confrontation into a viral cultural moment. Sanders left the stage with a forced smile, her team rushing to spin the narrative, but the damage was already done. Headlines the next morning read like a political obituary for Sanders' once uncheckable confidence. Sanders crumbles under Crockets.com. Crockett delivers masterclass in Grace Under Fire, a debate for the history books. Crockett, for her part, remained humble in interviews, deflecting praise and emphasizing the importance of truth. "This isn't about me," she told one reporter. "It's about accountability. It's about making sure leaders answer to the people they serve." In the days that followed, Crockett's social media following exploded, and clips of her dismantling Sanders' arguments were played on loop across every platform. Young voters in particular embraced her as a new kind of political figure, one who didn't need to shout to command attention, one who used facts instead of fear-mongering. Sanders' allies attempted to discredit her, but every attack only seemed to amplify Crockett's message. It wasn't just a politician anymore. She was a cultural icon, a symbol of resilience and truth, in an era where chaos often overshadowed integrity. Political analysts called her performance a turning point, predicting that it would elevate her career to new heights. For Crockett, the moment wasn't about fame. It was about proving that composure could be a weapon just as powerful as rhetoric. That calm could silence chaos more effectively than shouting ever could.